going to talk about city planning must reads and the importance of being a lifelong learner. Let's get into it. The first book I want to refer to as a must read is Contemporary Urban Planning, which discusses reurbanization and affordable housing. This book will synthesize all of these heavy and long winded topics and kind of highlight the urban development problems that you often see in cities and really speak to kind of thinking about the implications of certain urban planning practices in housing and its relation to transportation policies. It also takes a stab at, going over how green buildings have kind of shaped the idea of cities and what cities should look like. And it even gives you a kind of glimpse into the implications of urban renewal. So, this one is a good book to have on hand whenever you are looking to find a more abridged version of the different things that are within city planning and refer back to those policies or implications in a greater context. So, the second must read that I wanted to highlight is a favorite of mine. This is the Urban Design Handbook. For me, I had a decision within my career to, go into urban planning versus going into urban design. A lot of people don't really know the difference. And I would say urban planners use policy and strategy to master plan, and urban designers design city features, so such as parks, transportation, community amenities, infrastructure, and like public spaces. And so this book will give you a detailed explanation of the difference between an urban planning method and an urban design method. It is more site specific, meaning, some of the handbook details and methods are going to be for project sites rather than the entirety of a city. It also goes over, kind of foreground patterns of cities and block patterns of cities. And it talks about how all of these form based codes that you see on the books actually manifest themselves in the physical block formation of cities. And it kind of gives you a guide to how those codes are also documented. And you'll even see how this book addresses how the public is actually used in the public engagement process to strategize for some of these urban design uh, actions that cities take and urban designers take. So, this is a really good book if you're kind of on the edge between urban planning and urban design. I would say the third must read is Site Planning and Design. This book was written by, I believe, a landscape architect. So it is, once again, more design heavy. It kind of details what site planning means and the context of site planning within the urban framework. So, once again, it's going to be about site specific details and design guidelines that, kind of go with the context of a site. So when you go to different cities and you see certain block formations, certain sites, and how they kind of weave into the urban framework and fabric of a city, it's because a landscape architect or an urban designer or even an urban planner has thought about how sites fit into the overall framework of a city. And so you will go through this book and get a lot of best practices, and it will go over things such as street and parking design, site grading, how to do analysis, how to design for security, and it also touches on residential site design, which is a very niche type of design uh, that occurs and has to go with the context of a city. The fourth must read is also a really good book for students. This is a book that I had found when I was in undergrad, and it was super helpful to me because a lot of people don't know what urban planning is, but when they do know what urban planning is, they realize it's a very broad field. So just figuring out if you want to do the social aspect of urban planning, which is more so geared towards public engagement and public processes, or if you want to be like me, who focuses on the physical aspect of planning and go into urban design and think about, the physical elements of cities and city amenities. Or if you want to focus on policies and written law, zoning codes, land use codes, and how those form based codes actually affect the look of cities, this is a great book to have because there's so many paths to go down, and this book really breaks it down to see, where your career could actually go in planning and also urban design. And like I said, planning and urban design are different but highly similar. It will also have a career building info inside of it, and it discusses the importance of internships, moving in between private and public sectors, which is a world of a difference. Um, Maybe I'll do a video on my experience working for the public and private sector, but that's going to come at a later time. But this is a really good book. It is definitely a must read. So I will come to the fifth must read. It's the last one, but definitely not the least. I think this book is a masterpiece. It's called The Color of Law. It details the forgotten history of how government has segregated America. So, this is definitely a planning book anyone should read if they are focused on planning and city planning in the American context. And it talks about, the impact of racial segregation um, on the American landscape in the city. It discusses redlining, which is basically the denial or refusal of a loan towards a person or individual that poses I would say, economic or financial risk. And, a financial risk could be very subjective. And at that time, in Americans' history, financial risk was subjective to also race. And so this book will also go over the implications of race based zoning codes and policies that explicitly barred people of color from the right to live freely using local, state, or federal laws. And so reading this book will kind of uncover why we have certain remnants of segregation today in a lot of cities, and why certain cities have a duplication or replication of amenities, and how transportation factors into some of those physical barriers that mirrored the racial barriers of the time and even of today's time. So I would say this is definitely another must read. Um, every single one of these books that I've chosen are not just about the technical or social aspect of planning, it's also about the political aspect of planning. Like I said in my last videos, these books are not cheap, but they are worth having in your arsenal whenever you want to do really strong research and you want to design or plan anything, or even go to that city planning public meeting and have the knowledge and the tools to advocate for yourself or other people within your community or with other communities about the planning profession. I always say, unfortunately, planning and architecture could sometimes be elitist, but it should not be an elitist field. And so, one of the biggest things about this channel is just getting people interested in these professions, but also sharing knowledge. And so, I suggest anyone to subscribe or to add their comments on what they thought about these books. And yeah, I'll be back.